Welcome back. You're watching live from Paris on France 24. The headlines this hour. The manhunt for the Strasbourg shooter continues. Armed police launch a raid on the city's Neudorf neighbourhood, but suspect Sheriff Shekat remains at large as the death toll from the attack rises to 3. A week of talks on Yemen end with a major breakthrough. The Iranian-backed Houthi rebels and the Saudi-backed government have agreed on a ceasefire for the port city of Hodeidah. It could alleviate suffering for millions of civilians. And we'll have a special France 24 report on the migrants fleeing violence and instability in Libya. People who flocked to the country during the Gaddafi era have decided it's now just too dangerous to stay. First, the hunt continues for the man who killed 3 people in an attack on a Christmas market in Strasbourg. 29-year-old Sheriff Shekat has been on the run since Tuesday. Today, heavily armed police carried out an operation in the Neudorf district where he was last seen. He was injured in a shootout with security forces. The authorities believe he may have been radicalised in prison. He has a long criminal record and has been convicted 29 times. He was also on the French list of potential extremists. Well, France 24's Nadia Massi is in Strasbourg with more on the investigation.
I was in Neudorf at about 4 p.m. This afternoon when the police cordoned off one district, not allowing anybody in or anybody out. We spoke to a parent there who had a child in a school inside that cordoned off police area. She was being told the children weren't being let out of the building. Lots of police we saw going in and CRS, that's right, police vans are coming out as well. But after about an hour, police on that cordon told us the operation was over. Now, this is a neighbourhood where Sheriff Shekat was last seen by police forces on Tuesday night, where he disappeared into that suburb of Neudorf. And police, after that cordon ended at about 5 p.m. this afternoon, telling us they needed to go and check a number of houses in the area to make sure that he wasn't hiding out in any of those buildings. But they told us for the moment there were no signs that he was in the neighbourhood. But the security situation, of course, still remains very high here in the city. There are 750 police and soldiers deployed just here in Strasbourg. That's up from over 100 police that there were here yesterday. So the manhunt, Laura, still very much ongoing for Sheriff Shekat. 2 days now since he went missing and evaded capture after that attack next to the Christmas market where I am in the centre of Strasbourg.
And hundreds of mourners have been gathering in Strasbourg's 500-year-old cathedral tonight to pay tribute to the victims of Tuesday's attack. 3 people have died and 13 others are injured. 5 of those are in a serious condition. The Christmas market remains closed at what should be the busiest time of the year, and there are some 700 police officers patrolling the streets. Catherine Clifford has more on how the city is in mourning just 2 weeks before Christmas.
Still in shock, Strasbourg residents take a moment to think of the victims at the site of the attack.
I'm here to reflect mainly. That's all I can do for now.
The people who were killed thought they were having a good day, a good night. It really hurts to think about it.
The city is back to work after an official day of mourning on Wednesday. Nearby, the central Kléber Square is a gathering point for those taking a moment from the day to come and leave a tribute.
It's symbolic. I'm showing my support to all the victims and to my dear Strasbourg.
At a usually bustling time of year, residents describe an eerie quiet across the town.
There's a very heavy atmosphere after everything that happened. People are in a state of shock and are avoiding leaving their homes.
Among the messages left for the victims, some recurring slogans: Je suis Strasbourg, I am Strasbourg, and United against barbarity.
The British Prime Minister Theresa May is in Brussels, where she's hoping to get her Brexit deal signed. May won a vote of no confidence last night after she promised not to seek re-election. The British Parliament is set to vote on her deal before January 21st, but in its current form it would be rejected. So May is seeking legal guarantees from the EU that the so-called Irish backstop would not bind the UK indefinitely to EU rules. But Europe's leaders have said they will not renegotiate any part of that deal. The Prime Minister undeterred. Take a listen.
My focus now is on ensuring that I can get those assurances that we need to get this deal over the line, because I genuinely believe it's in the best interests of both sides, the UK and the EU, to get the deal over the line, to agree a deal. But I recognise the strength of concern in the House of Commons, and that's what I will be putting to colleagues today.
Well, our European Affairs editor, Catherine Nicholson, is over at that summit in Brussels tonight. And, Catherine, is Theresa May banging her head against a brick wall, or is there any sign that she might get some concessions from Europe?
Well, I think that depends what you mean by signs, and I think it depends what you mean by concessions, and I'm not trying to split hairs there. Theresa May arrived to quite a warm welcome from her European colleagues, so signs there that they are wanting to help her. I mean, the Prime Minister of Luxembourg, Xavier Bettel, literally said that to the press as she arrived. He gave her a hug and a kiss and said to the press, "We are ready to help." The question is, how can they help? And that's where we come to these concessions. Theresa May made a point of saying that she's heard what members of Parliament in the UK have said to her about how unacceptable to them the idea of a permanent backstop solution is. Now, this is relating to the backstop to avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland if the UK and the European Union cannot find a way to avoid that border by almost the end of the transition period. Then they go into this backstop solution where it seems there is a more or less open end date. The House of Commons in the UK has called this completely unacceptable across the board, including many members of Theresa May's own party. So what can she do about that here? Well, unluckily for her, that those backstop provisions are sewn into the withdrawal agreement. That was that absolutely massive document, which is what we're calling the Brexit deal. It is considered legally binding by the European Commission and the UK government. They've both signed it off. It had been signed off by the European Council, you remember, at the end of November, and then moved on to this crucial ratification process. So the message we've heard consistently from the likes of Jean-Claude Juncker, Donald Tusk, the President of the European Parliament, Antonio Tajani, is this is not going to be renegotiated. Leaders such as Emmanuel Macron saying as well, this is a legally speaking non-negotiable agreement. So yes, Theresa May looking to find some concessions around that. Could those come in the political declaration that comes along with the withdrawal agreement? That is not a legally binding document. So it's talking about assurances. That's where language can be changed, of course. But then will that be enough to satisfy lawmakers in the UK? Being, as it is, non-legally binding. Theresa May spoke to her fellow European leaders for almost an hour just this evening before they started their dinner. It was quite a long session for her to speak to them, going on previous sessions, and we are waiting to hear a little bit later on what has come out of that, if anything.
All right, we'll have to wait and see on that. Now, it's not only Brexit that the EU has to deal with right now, is it, Catherine? Believe it or not. Tell us what else is on the agenda for this summit.
Absolutely. I've kept saying this all day. This is not a Brexit summit, as many people have been branding it. In fact, Brexit has budged its way onto the agenda just a couple of days ago when Theresa May decided to call off her vote in the House of Commons over the deal. Already at this summit, there's been discussions about the EU sanctions against Russia. The European leaders have unanimously agreed that they will continue those for another period of 6 months. They've talked about the standoff in the Azov Sea, of great concern to the European Union, as it sees itself as a strong ally to Ukraine. There are also matters such as migration and climate change, absolutely huge issues which have been somewhat pushed to the side
affected by the Brexit issue. They will get a bit more of a hearing tomorrow, of course, but today it does seem that it is somewhat all about Brexit.
All right, Catherine, thank you very much indeed. Catherine Nicholson there at the EU summit in Brussels. And we do understand that the British Prime Minister, Theresa May, is now back on her way home. So there you go. All right, moving to other news now. And peace talks for Yemen have wrapped up in Sweden with a major breakthrough. The Iranian-backed Houthi rebels and the Saudi-backed government have agreed on a ceasefire for Hodeidah, the port city, which is a lifeline for two-thirds of the country. Fighting there has worsened a famine affecting millions of people. All forces have agreed to withdraw from the city over the next few days. To talk a bit more about that, I'm joined by Suze van Meegen. She's from the Norwegian Refugee Council for Yemen. Thank you very much for being with us on France 24 tonight. What is your take on the ceasefire agreement? What will it mean for those millions of civilians in Yemen on the brink of starvation right now?
Well, the ceasefire agreement feels like a phenomenal breakthrough for us. We've been calling on parties to the conflict to convene at the negotiating table for several years now, and this is beyond anything we could have hoped for. If this agreement is implemented, what it will mean is that civilians that have been displaced from Hodeidah city and governorate, which includes 500,000 people in the last 6 months alone, may feel greater confidence in returning home and home to jobs, home to their houses and home to their communities. So while it remains to be seen whether this will hold, this feels very positive.
Well, what is your feeling? Because it was just a handshake, wasn't it? There's no written agreement, as I understand it. Do you think it will hold?
Well, it's very hard to predict anything on Yemen, but we have seen the United Nations Special Envoy, Martin Griffiths, has published some written agreements on his website today. They specify a number of agreements from parties to the conflict, and they're very specific, not only on Hodeidah, but on the besieged city of Taiz in southern parts of Yemen. So at this stage, we've been cautiously optimistic for quite a long time, and this is the best thing we've seen in a while.
And do you see this as the first step towards ending the war?
We would like to think so. Of course, the war in Yemen has many layers. It covers many areas and currently taking place across 32 front lines in 11 different governorates across the country. This agreement refers only to 2 of those. Nonetheless, this is certainly referring to a very significant portion of the conflict. The opening of Yemen's ports and an agreement on the way they will be managed will allow food to reach people across the country. And we would like to think that the confidence built through these steps could amount now to a breakthrough across the whole nation.
All right, Suze van Meegen, thank you very much indeed. Well, moving to Libya now, where migrants who have lived in the country for decades are increasingly deciding to leave. Before the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, Libya's economy attracted many migrants seeking a better future. But the revolution brought with it economic hardship and violent instability, meaning many are now desperate to get out. Our reporters have been meeting with some of those people trying to get home.
This group of Filipino nurses have been living and working in Libya for years. They are now having trouble getting paid. Some haven't received any money since 2016.
When my money will be remitted, I will go as fast as I can. Although how much we love Libya, but we cannot stand anymore the situation, the fear and the stress.
This specific service is attended mainly by Africans. Most of them are from Nigeria. In the Gaddafi era, Libya offered work opportunities and good wages. Some here have lived in Libya for over 20 years. They have papers and had chosen to stay in the country. Now, with cash shortages in the banks and a plummeting Libyan dinar, many want to return to their country of origin.
With the closed ports in Italy, in Malta and other places, now it's difficult to travel. Many are not having money, many sometimes difficult in receiving the payment, so they have practically sometimes no choice except this choice of returning back to their home country.
After the Mass, The community gathers in the courtyard. The market used to take place in front of the church. Now, that's become too dangerous.
Working in Libya is very difficult. All they do is exploit people. Sometimes you work and get nothing in return. If you complain, the guns come out. Everyone has a gun here, that's the problem. I'm ready to leave Libya.
People who go through the sea, they are jeopardizing their life, and which is never done. Somebody like me that have a family, am I going to put my family on the sea?
Adewumni has decided to stay in Libya, but to send the rest of the family back to Nigeria. He lives in this one-room flat with his wife and their 2 small children. He initially came to Tripoli hoping to send enough money home to start a business.
The problem is issue of sending money home. Bank is not working. No matter how you work now, no matter how you get money now, there's no need. You don't find it easy. This is the reason why I even decided now that my family must go home.
Every day fight, every day boo 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 boo. And then bomb, every day they shoot gun. I also hear gun now, this afternoon. I'm 100% fed up in Libya. That's why I'm decided to go back to my country.
With the current crisis, the family has no money to pay the trip back. They are now hoping the IOM will provide them with free flights home.
Turkey is preparing to launch another offensive against Kurdish forces in northern Syria. The United States, which backs the Kurds, has warned that any unilateral action by Ankara would be unacceptable. Catherine Clifford has more on the tensions there.
In this footage, Kurdish fighters claim to have moved into the centre of Hajin, the main village in the last pocket still held by the Islamic State group in Syria. The YPG is one of several mainly Kurdish militias backed by the US, which have taken control of much of the northeast of Syria during the 7-year war. Turkey also holds territory in the north of Syria that it took back from the Kurds in an operation which finished in March. It sees the group as a terrorist offshoot of the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party. Known as the PKK, it has fought an insurgency against the Turkish state for over 3 decades and is blacklisted as a terror group by Ankara and its Western allies. Turkey's furious with the US for backing the YPG on the ground in Syria, and this isn't the first time Erdogan has threatened an operation against these forces. This time, he's warned of a move to free the east of the Euphrates from the Kurdish forces. The YPG's representatives say such a move would set back its recent advances against the Islamic State group in that zone.
These threats will seriously affect our troops. These troops in particular have the experience of fighting the Islamic State group. Without a doubt, they will go back to protect their homes and their families. That will be their priority.
Nearby in the Syrian Kurdish town of Qamishli, residents are afraid.
We hope that all the major powers, and especially America, will put an end to this, so he will leave us be, Erdogan. We wish to live in peace here, whether it be among Kurds or Arabs or anyone.
The Turkish president's announcement came a day after the Pentagon said it would install US observation posts in the northeast border region, intended to prevent unrest between the Turkish army and the YPG.
In Mali, a suspected jihadist on a motorcycle has killed at least 42 people in the eastern city of Menaka. Mali has been battling al-Qaeda-linked militants since 2012, and French forces are stationed in the country to try and restore stability. 42 people killed in a drive-by shooting. That's according to a Tuareg leader in Mali. Now, there's mounting concern for 2 Canadian citizens who have been detained in China. Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig are under investigation for activities that threaten national security. Relations between Canada and China are already strained over the recent arrest of a top Chinese executive in Vancouver. Radaba Abbas has more.
Tit-for-tat arrests. On Thursday, China confirmed it was holding 2 Canadian citizens suspected of harming state security.
Canadian citizens Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor are suspected of engaging in actions damaging to China's national security. According to Chinese criminal law and procedures, the Beijing and Dandong National Security Bureaus have taken separate compulsory measures on December 10.
The two nations are at a stalemate over trade and cyber espionage. Canada has also arrested a top Chinese executive wanted in the United States. Many observers believe the detentions are retaliation for Canada's arrest of Chinese national Meng Wanzhou. The chief financial officer of Chinese telecoms giant Huawei was arrested on December the 1st in Canada on the request of US authorities, who plan to charge her with fraud over business dealings that allegedly violated US sanctions on Iran. Beijing has strongly objected to her arrest.
Meng's arrest was a mistaken action and Canada should immediately release her.
The 46-year-old executive was released on bail Tuesday pending a US extradition request. It remains to be seen if the Canadians will soon be released as well.
All right, well, Yuka Roya is here with an update on